Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another You Be the Behavior Consultant. Good to see everybody here and excited to get back into the groove again. We took last week off due to some travel commitments, but we're back with another hopefully fascinating topic for you. This time we're going to talk about some practices. Well, the words might be new to some people, but once we get into the topic, I think they're going to sound familiar to people. So why don't we go ahead and dive in? This is You Be the Behavior Consultant, a live stream I try to do most Mondays as long as I am around. Last week I had some consulting work, so I wasn't here to join everybody live and in person. This is how it works. I present a topic for discussion. I've got some questions. Hi, Cynthia. Good to see you here. I have some questions to prompt discussion as always, and then we're going to look at a few video clips, and hopefully I hope as we get into this, you guys will have some things to share with this, because this is one of those ones that's going to be a little bit more discussion based, I hope. And then of course we'll recap everything at the end. So here is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about hypothetical constructs, explanatory fictions, and circular reasoning. Whoa, we're getting way into critical thinking skills and logic. Whoa, deep stuff. But this is really important for us as animal trainers because we get a lot of information coming at us and, giving us suggestions on what to do to solve problems and get to our behavior goals. So it's good for us to explore this stuff. And hello to Anne. Glad to have you here. I'm going to cough. I'm so sorry. But I got some liquid here to keep my voice going. So this, of course, means we're going to have to get into some definitions. So if anybody already knows what these words mean, feel free to hop into the chat and put your, and Annette is here. Yay. We're glad to have you back as well. So feel free to get in there and offer your explanations for these terms. Or if you just feel like you have an example, that would be great too. I of course have some definitions prepared for you, but it's always nice to have people's interpretation if you've heard these terms before. And then we're going to get into why it's important for us to avoid using these practices when we are in our dialogue about animal training, and what can we do to help keep us on track. So what do you guys think? Do any of these words sound familiar? Or can you think of any examples if definitions are a little bit challenging at first? One that might be more familiar to people is the word hypothetical construct. I think we might have talked about these hypothetical constructs before, or you might have heard it before if you've been dabbling in the world of behavior science and animal training for a few years. Does that one sound familiar to anybody? Any thoughts on that one? I'll give you guys a chance. I know it takes a little while to type things into the chat and for it to come over this way. So Cynthia has heard that word before. It sounds familiar. And Al says, hypothetical construct. The concepts of intelligence and motivation are used to explain phenomena. Yeah, so those are good examples. We often hear people talk about animals as being intelligent, and that might explain why they are more likely to participate in a training session or pick up something. Motivation is another one. He's just not motivated. That's why he's not participating, or he's super motivated today. So that explains why we're getting good behavior. And for Anne, these are new terms, and that's totally fine. I think I put the big words in the presentation today. So the big words sometimes the technical jargon can be a little off-putting, but we're going to try and tease that out so that it gets more familiar to people today, so that we can move on to the practical application part. So don't worry about that. But yeah, so that's right. Al's on a point here with some examples of what a hypothetical construct might be. So words like intelligence and motivation. Does that kind of help a few people maybe to think of some more that you might have heard before? I can give the fancy definition, and that might help generate a few. A work of fiction that attempts to explain the cause of a real event. Yeah. Well, we're going to get into for explanatory fiction. Yeah. Yeah. Moving on to the next one. He's got our EF there to help that. Yeah, and that ties in with our hypothetical construct, doesn't it? That's how these are related, for sure, for sure. So that's why we have both of those together there. Yep, and you're welcome to jump around on all of these because they all are really related. This is why we're talking about all three of them together. They kind of fall under one big umbrella that impacts training, or can impact training, and it may not be impacting yours, but these may be things that you have experienced when you're in dialogue or discussions about training. And critical circular reasoning from Al occurs when an argument doesn't go anywhere because the reasoner begins with what he or she is trying to end up with. I'm in circular reasoning. There is no progress. Okay, yeah. So that's true, and we're going to get into an even more refined definition that I hope will help explain even more what that means, hopefully. I found a really good resource on logic and critical thinking that I'm going to share with everybody in the education program, and I think that hopefully I'm going to expand that out a little bit for all of you because I'm finding it to be such a great resource. So, all right, so let me give you a first little formal definition, and then and maybe a few more examples. So on the hypothetical construct example from Chris, emotions of the learner explain the behavior result. Yeah, so yeah, I think emotions can be a good one, and because they, again, we are because I do have mood as an example, so that I think that's a really valid one. So this is a fancy definition. So a conjectured entity, a process or event that is not observed directly. So I think that's really a good thing to think about. So not observable. We can't see it. So emotions are like a private event too, right? But obviously, as you guys know, we have our goats lecture coming up. That's going to help us a little bit more with emotions. And it's assumed, and it's used to explain an observable phenomenon. And that kind of ties in with our explanatory fiction coming up. But it's not just about that relationship between those observable variables, but it has surplus meaning over and above those relationships. So that's why it can kind of stand alone, like intelligence, or bad mood, or happy, or or even the word aggressive can be a hypothetical construct. So I have a few examples here. So intelligence is a really common one. Dominance can be a hypothetical construct. So and here's one I think, especially those of our group here that work with parrots. What about the terrible twos? How many times have we heard, a parrot is in the terrible twos? Another one, I think that a lot of people who have worked with animals that may have come from maybe, they're being adopted and now they're in the quote honeymoon period. So they say the behavior is good now, but the honeymoon period's going to end, and then just wait, all the bad behavior is going to start emerging because the honeymoon period is over. We talk about animals showing guilty behavior, and when they did something wrong, so they talk about guilt there, and certainly hormonal behavior, or behavior's been blamed on hormones. Maybe an animal's hyperactive. The mood, that ties in with Chris talking about emotions. What's terrible too is not a parrot person, says Annetta. So this is sort of that idea that once the animal has gotten to a certain age, like it's a 2-year-old, that it's going to start behaving really, poorly. It's going to show undesired behaviors. So maybe it's a teenager or an adolescent or a 2-year-old, a toddler. And so you'll see that a lot in the parrot community that, it's hit its terrible twos. And so now it's behaving like a toddler and showing you bad behavior. I also have here, I know I say it says species. Now it makes sense to Annetta. I have species like it's a cat, it's a fish, it's a reptile, or giraffe. And the reason I have that there is because Chris says you don't want to know, Annetta. The reason I have this label of species is because I do think sometimes we attribute behavior to some characteristic of the species that is sort of assume that people understand what that means, like, oh, that's an orangutan for you, or well, ravens, you know what I mean, or well, fish, they're just fish, they can't really do those things, or well, giraffes, oh my god, giraffes, and so there's sort of this assumption that goes along with this label for the species. Yeah, poor donkeys are stubborn. Yeah, exactly. That's a huge one, right? Donkeys are always labeled as stubborn. Absolutely. So many superstitious comments attributed to species. And Lindsay says, just jumped in. Great topic. Listening while I work. Oh, well, I have you in here, Lindsay, with a video. Donkeys are so stubborn, says Annetta. Yeah, so I think that one with the species is also kind of some assumptions made about animals because of hypothetical constructs. So I'm glad you guys like that one, because when I had that written there, I was like, oh, I think I need to explain what that means, because there needs to be a lot more understanding of what it means by just saying the species. So there's our sort of our example of hypothetical constructs, and hopefully that kind of helps explain a little bit more about what this conjectured entity or process that's not observed that's used to identify something about this animal or behavior that really just has no relationship to what behavior you might be seeing, right? So I'm sure all of you that have worked with donkeys have seen very, very cooperative donkeys at times, and times when donkeys are not cooperating. But you would definitely not say it's just because it's a donkey, right? You as people who have worked with animals would start looking for other explanations as to why that donkey is not participating. You wouldn't just say it's a donkey, that's why. Right? Okay. So now let's take it to that step further. Just jumping in myself, such a timely subject. Oh, good. All right. I'm glad it's pertinent to whatever you're working on in your animal training at this moment. All right. So let's take this a step further. I was wondering if I should show you a video yet or not, but I think maybe I'll save it for after we look at explanatory fiction, because now we're just kind of setting the tone. Owls and vultures. Yeah. I think owls, especially in those that are trained to be handled, they've got all sorts of various reputations based on the fact that they're an owl, and same with vultures, right? But it's so much deeper than that. So let's go to our explanatory fiction. And I think Al did a good job explaining this one. So again, owls are dumb. Oh yeah, totally. And vultures are aggressive. Yep, great. Automatic assumptions about owls because they're owls and because vultures are vultures. So let's look at explanatory fiction. So a mentalistic, and we're going to get into that term as well, and mythical explanation for behavior that attributes, again, unobservable fictional processes or variables to the occurrence of the behavior. So we've just kind of talked about fictional processes or variables, which could be these hypothetical constructs. That's exactly what a hypothetical construct is. It's a fictional process or variable, just something that we just kind of made up. We can't see it, and we're saying, this is why this happens. And so it requires us to believe that fictional variable is valid. So we have to believe that owls are dumb. We have to believe that vultures are aggressive, and that donkeys are stubborn, and that the honeymoon period exists, and that the terrible twos exist in order for this explanatory fiction to work, right? So it really adds no level of explanation for behavior, and it really doesn't connect this important point right here, how the environment influences the behavior. It says that's not important. What's important is that you buy into this fact that donkeys are stubborn and owls are dumb, and that there's a honeymoon period, and that the terrible twos exist. Um, and Soraya says she's a bit late, but the hypothetical are anthropomorphic emotions and behaviors applied to animals. So it could be, it could be that that's part of it. Although I would say that that might take a deeper dive on that topic of emotions that we're going to go over in goats. I don't know that we necessarily know for sure or not how animals experience emotions. We don't even know how each other experiences emotions, right? we don't know if we experience the same thing. You like the remorse dog, guilty dog, but actually maybe fearful or avoidant behavior, right? So the guilty, we did say guilty in the beginning is a label, and I think that's a really fascinating topic because I have a friend who did a great research project on that. I don't think it's published yet, so I can't really tell you the results. I don't want to ruin her moment, but we probably can say that. That behavior is explanatory fiction, and that if you were to look at what happens in the environment, you would see that it's behavior that's emitted under certain conditions, right? So this ties in very well with this topic here, yeah. Okay, so now going back to what you guys were sharing. So some explanatory fictions then, so we kind of tie the hypothetical construct with the explanatory fiction. They kind of go hand in hand, right? So parrots, now we can explain that difficult behavior happens because we believe, when they hit their terrible twos, now bad behavior is going to happen. And animals are usually well behaved during the honeymoon period, if you believe there's a honeymoon period. And that giraffes are flighty and high strung, so you can't really train them. Or reptiles aren't trained because, well, they're just not really intelligent, right? So you'd have to believe those hypothetical constructs in order to use these explanatory fictions to believe that behavior. Does that make some sense now? We're kind of tying all those together. Let's see. Al says a lemur will not sit on the scale because lemurs are too hyper. Yeah, you can't train them. They're just too hyper and bouncy. So no point in trying to get them on the scale because that's just the way they are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it gives you sort of an excuse not to get to a resolution to your behavior problem. Exactly. Yeah, so I just have a fun little video clip of some crocodiles from when I was recently over in the UAE, and it just kind of demonstrates that it's certainly not about intelligence, I would say, but just their experiences, and you can kind of hear us talking about that in the background.
Some of them are like,
oh, it's
and now if everybody comes.
Yeah, so they have already learned.
And also we feed them just once a week.
Oh, okay.
Just also, so
yeah.
I don't know if that influence.
Oh. Hello there. Look at you. You're gorgeous, though. Look how beautiful you are. Oh my God.
One of
some
them
more.
is...
We got a whole bunch coming. They certainly know, don't they? They said we've already learned how this game works. Somebody's standing up here, and more coming in.
Some of them are like,
oh, it's must
and now
be
if everybody comes.
Yeah. So I wish that video really showed you just how big those animals are. They were very, very big. But it kind of explains more about, not that they were smart or not smart, but a little bit more about what influenced their movement towards us, right? More about their learning history. Yeah. All right. So, and keep sharing examples here, as I'd love to hear more of how this is tying into your experiences or things that you may have heard in discussions. I mean, I just shared a few examples here, but I think there's many more examples out there that we hear frequently. So let's get into the circular reasoning. Okay, circular reasoning. So this is kind of a fancy definition from a person who specializes in logic and critical thinking. So the way they defined it was that at least one premise, so the argument that you're making, is that you're providing to support or justify your claim. Oh, wait. Yeah, at least one premise that is being provided to support or justify the claim in the conclusion is itself dependent on the conclusion. So basically what you're arguing is also in your conclusion. So that is your circular reasoning. And I know that sounds a little weird in this definition, but I will give you some examples that I think will help clarify that. And I think we do see this a lot. Like, I guess what keeps coming to mind for me is like more like chat group discussions. And I've made some really obvious ones, but the last one may not be so obvious. Sometimes you have to dig deep into the wording because people will just change the wording to make it sound like they're not saying the same thing twice, but they do. Soraya says, yes, these myths are very strict preconcepts, prejudice to understand the animal in front of you. Yeah, I think we get stuck in them really easily. He won't do it for me because he doesn't like me. How do you know he doesn't like you? Yeah, exactly. Because he doesn't like me. Because he won't work for me. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Those are good examples. So let's do some more. So you're now seeing behavior problems because the honeymoon period is over. The honeymoon period is over, so of course you should expect to see behavior problems, right? So it's basically the same thing said twice. The animal is difficult because he has become 2 years old. The animal has now hit the terrible twos, therefore it's difficult. The behavior problems are the result of the animal being hormonal. Because the animal is now hormonal, it is given there will be behavior problems. We don't usually train giraffes because they're too high strung. The flighty nature of giraffes caused all training plans to come to a stall. So, but they get more complex, where, I mean, I made these ones fairly obvious, but I think there's some that are like, that first sentence may be a statement, and then there may be a whole like series of long explanations, and then basically the same thing gets repeated in a different way at the end. So it can sound like, there's this big explanation, but it really ends up being the same thing said twice. So we have to be really good critical thinkers sometimes to flush out these things. So how one breaks these myths with science-backed facts? That's a very important question, isn't it? And to teach the client. Yeah, so that's the important question. So first we have to have our awareness, right? So which is what we're doing here. Oh my God, I do this all the time without knowing it, Suzanne. I agree. I think we tend to do this and sometimes like even with the crocodiles that you saw, it's easy to stand there and go, oh my gosh, these crocodiles are so smart. Look at them. They figured it out. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, because if we can share like a common language or a common, or we operationalize things, I think, we all have like the things about, oh, gorillas are like this compared to orangutans compared to chimpanzees. We tend to see those trends. We can operationalize that. What is it that makes those things different? What is it that we are saying about those that we share the common language with? What is it that we see as trends in behavior that are different about orangutans and gorillas and chimpanzees that is a shared understanding between us that are communicating as professionals? I think those are things we can operationalize a little bit. And I think like when we talk about the honeymoon period, I think that is something that we can operationalize too. Why is it that animals may be less inclined to emit the undesired responses during that early exposure to a new environment versus after they've spent more time in that environment? It's just new stimulus conditions, right? Where they haven't had experience emitting those behaviors that they did in a different environment, and they haven't had an opportunity to build any reinforcement history there. But then maybe they, maybe some element, something occurs that they're like, oh, well, this might be an opportunity to use that behavior I used in that other environment. And then it gets reinforced. And then it's like, oh, great, this is an opportunity for me to keep using that behavior that worked in the past. And now it's working again. And so they start using it in that new environment. So I think you just need to understand, and explain what's happening there, as opposed to just saying, oh, it's a honeymoon period. You can start explaining in more detail what's going on there, or think about why is that happening? What's going on there? Start using what you know about behavioral science to say, okay, this is why that's happening, instead of just saying it's some, magical thing. There's science behind it, right? And Soraya says, yes, metaphors are a shortcut to explain, but troublesome also. Yeah, so we just have to make sure we're on the same page when we're explaining some things or using some shortcuts. So that's the carefulness there. But we'll get to our slide that talks about how we can be a bit more careful, so that we're not making it we're not being too rigid, but we're also not falling into the trap of I made it so that I can't make any progress. Okay, did I want to show you another video? We'll save that one. Well, actually, I think a good video now I might share is maybe since we were talking about honeymoon periods and things like that. I will share Lindsay training. Heads up for Lindsay, because I believe the parrot that we're going to look at here was a companion parrot before it came to the facility where she's training. And I think what's really great about this video is that despite whatever prior history the animal has, instead of thinking about, even though I think even in the video we talk a little bit about prior history, it's really just about thinking about, well, this is the behavior the animal is giving me here, and this is our starting point, and we're just looking at what behavior the animal gives us in this environment, and really responding to how the animal is behaving in that environment. And so she's going to use some of the techniques that you guys may have seen me use in other videos where I train parrots and work on teaching the bird to step up on the hand. Some things that are a little bit different is it's a little bit more refined. In some of my previous videos, you may have seen me ask the animal to kind of come forward more and keep coming forward more and keep coming forward more. But as you may have recalled, when we talked about systematic desensitization and things like that, we were saying how it would be better to ask the animal to move forward to a point that it's comfortable and then go back, as opposed to keep asking it to come forward. So we're doing more of that come forward but go back, come forward and go back, as opposed to pushing for more and more and more. And so Lindsay's doing a really good job of applying that. And so this was the first time of applying that, and you'll have to let us know, Lindsay, where you are now. She sent a photo a little while ago where the bird was now stepping up on the hand, but this was just the first training session with that. And again, what I think is really cool is that, whatever the animal's prior history was, just that's great to have as information, but really what we're focusing on is what the animal is emitting in this moment.
Go.
Totally.
Yeah. So I'd go ahead and reinforce him for just being there. Yeah, you're going to have to really slowly drag him closer. Right here.
Trying to get my arm ready.
Yeah. And I would leave your food hand there. Your hand is going to just very slowly move
Start
back.
moving.
Yeah, yep. Oh, so that was weird. He's like, that was weird. I'm not used to that yet. Oh, so he's like, this is weird stuff. Oh, he's already thinking about stepping up. He's got experience with it. That's why. Yeah. There you go. I would reinforce that. Yeah. And so your hand just kind of slowly moves forward when he does something you want, and he might take himself back, so that's all right. So you don't necessarily have to move him back, kind of like with the bush dog.
Sure.
And I would just like slowly move it towards you, towards your shoulder. Good. And then bring it forward when he takes a step back, or when he takes a step forward towards you. Think of that as, oh, I'm going to reinforce that by moving my hand forward. And so your hand becomes the bridging stimulus. Your hand moving forward becomes the bridge. Kind of like saying, you did good, so my hand moves forward. Yep, good. So it's like graze, 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 graze. Now I'm going to ask for a little bit more behavior. Great, perfect. Yeah, exactly. That's it. You got it. And this is where it gets a little trickier because he's going to have to make a decision. Like, do I put a foot on you or not? That was good. Just, a little lean. Like, and that's okay because he looked at your hand.
He chose not to bite.
Yeah, yep, it's all right because you maybe have to reload.
I gotta reload.
Yeah, yep, that's a good idea. And I sometimes reinforce just for looking at the hand and not doing anything bad.
Making good choices.
Yep. Yeah. Great. That was good because he walked over fast and comfortably. Right. Yeah, you got it. There you go. Perfect. That was it. Yeah, because his toenails touching.
Yeah.
Great. I give him for that. Perfect. Your hand came forward.
You're a little monster.
Yeah. Gotta reload. Yep. And that's great to move him back when you gotta reload and get reset. And I would give him food while you put your hand in position.
Sure.
So that your hand coming up is not scary.
I'll take that. That's crazy. That's a crazy bird.
Okay.
I'll take that right now.
Just because sometimes the hand moving up is what causes them to want to bite because of their past history.
Yes. Yeah, and I think he was, I think
Forced onto the hand.
I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe not by his original mom,
Uh-huh.
but by people later in his life.
Yeah. There you go. That was good. Yeah. That inching forward is good. And he's a little toe lifting. So that was him being a little concerned, but he was like, I'm not sure. There you go, good. That was perfect. Your hand coming forward at the right moment. Oh, yeah, perfect. That was exactly it. Your hand was the bridge coming forward with the food. That was good.
Weight on me.
That was good. And he just brought himself away, which is fine. That was fine. And so rather than bite, he said, I remove myself, which is exactly what we want. He might be slowing down.
Might be.
Yeah, that's fine.
That might be good for
That's fine. That's a good go.
Totally.
Fun to watch there. So yeah, you have to give us an update, Lindsay, where you're at now. If he's getting a little more consistent. So Soraya says donkeys. Just to address the donkeys are stubborn issue, what she says to clients, you must be careful to make the animal want to do the behavior, not just force it. So as you can sometimes with horses, is how I explain it in plain language, because they are smarter, and she has a little face with a hand over it. Well, and I get like sometimes when we're speaking with clients, we try to make it more accessible for them, and we're trying to find plain language to help people understand. So I get that. Yeah. And so improve the environment, and your training tactics will be more pleasant for the animal. Yeah. So we're just trying to find a way to make it easier for people to understand sometimes. Yes, I get it. All right. So back on the video with the African gray there. So again, if we look at our environment, instead of going back and saying, well, this African gray came from an environment where maybe and I'm not saying that this is the case with that bird at all, but I think sometimes what we hear sometimes in the companion animal world is that animals were abused, and therefore this means they're not going to be trainable or something to that effect. Like I have to admit, I have some friends that will explain away some of their pet behavior as well. Their history is such. They were abused and therefore blah, 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 or they think we're going to bring them back to the shelter is one of my friends says all the time. And I just smile and, let it go. It's just a friend who's, that's her interpretation. But, if we just kind of, let that go, I mean, not that there isn't learning history that is impacting their behavior, but we just start with where the organism is at, where the learner is. And we say, okay, well, this is where he is in terms of his responses towards hands. Maybe he views hands as aversive, and so we're going to start at a place where he's able to give us desired responses that we can reinforce when a hand is in the environment. And so we're going to start shaping from there and see where we can go. So so for me, I was really happy with that training session. I thought that was a great success, and of course Lindsay has built upon that and was able to get farther. And so we'll look forward to your reports down the road. Okay, so all of these things that we've described so far fall under this heading of mentalism. And this is another one of those, technical jargony words, but it's helpful for us to understand, what it means to have a mentalistic approach to behavior so that I know what it is. Lindsay says he's coming along 2 feet in a lift off the other day now to build up duration. Oh, awesome. That's great news. So we're getting somewhere with him, and that's really great to hear. So you'll have to send a video when he's getting to be pretty solid so we can share with everybody. All right. I'll just read this definition here. So mentalism is an approach to explaining behavior that assumes that a mental or inner dimension exists that's different from a behavioral dimension, and that phenomena in this dimension either directly cause or at least mediate some form of behavior, if not all. And so this is different from the behaviorist approach. And Chris says, nice job to Lindsay. Yes, and Lindsay is a phenomenal trainer. I've been able to witness it firsthand, so it's great to see the work she's doing. So let's take a look at what mentalistic versus behaviorist approach looks like. And this is a really super cool image from Rogue ABA, and they have they share these freely. So credit to them and thank you to them for letting us share this. And what's really cool on this poster is they do have some definitions for hypothetical construct, explanatory fiction, and circular reasoning, kind of in a single sentence version. And they're all under the category of mentalism. And when we look at a behavior from a mentalistic approach, that kind of blames the learner or something intangible within the learner for why the behavior is occurring. And unfortunately, it sort of brings an end to looking for solutions or some way to address that behavior or reaching our behavior goal. And the behaviorist approach, or the behavior analytic approach, views behavior as shaped or influenced by the environment. And so that kind of lets us look at what we can change. What can we do differently to get to our desired goal? And so when we let go of that mentalistic approach, it can help us interpret behavior a little bit more clearly. And we can look for those stimulus conditions that occasion the behavior. So what are those things in the environment that, set it up so that animal is more likely to evoke the behavior response we want, or what's making it more likely that they're doing the undesired response. And we start looking for those consequences that maintain the behavior, whether it's a behavior we want or one that we don't want. And so it gives us some tools when we take a behaviorist approach as opposed to these mentalistic approaches. So this is why we want to be aware of the mentalistic approach, and so that we're not drifting that way too frequently, or if we are using that language, we're conscientious of it when we're using it and why we're using it. And if it is just to kind of help be a little bit more accessible, we get it and we understand why we're using it, but we're still practicing our behaviorist approaches when we're actually problem solving. So how do we stay on that track? That was one of the questions that Soraya had. And Well, actually, before we do that, I'm going to show you another video. So let's go to a giraffe video because I think giraffes are notoriously blamed for either being not very smart or being fearful. So they're less likely to participate in animal training. And it's not that this animal was getting blamed for that, but I just think it's a really great example of how the environment is so impactful on why this animal was not participating. And you're going to kind of see how we problem solved the situation. So just to give you a little background on this individual, she just shows a lot of things tend to be aversive stimuli for her, and so it creates a situation where she's less likely to approach people and interact with people. And so to even get started training behaviors where she might take food as a reinforcer is really challenging, because there was just no environment where she was comfortable approaching people to take food, even though she has long history working with the people there, or being around the people there, I should say. And so we tried a lot of different environments, and it took a while to figure out a place where she would actually be comfortable enough to respond. And you'll really see it's about the environment. It's not about giraffes are flighty. I mean, she's an individual with her own, learning history. And the other thing I want to point out is that her son is in another space that you'll see in another enclosure you'll see in the video. They were separated because she was he's old enough that he could potentially mate with her, and she was coming into breeding condition, and so they had to be separated for just a few days. He is hand raised, so he loves people, has no problem with people touching him, will come right up to people, and he was hand raised because she didn't take care of him when he was born. But what I really want you to notice is that there's going to be some browse hung on a feeding station, which she has approached in the past, but only if she was like pregnant, so really hungry. And you're going to see there's so many things about that area that she's like hesitant to approach, telling us there are negative reinforcement contingencies impacting her behavior in that environment. So we needed to take care of those negative reinforcement contingencies in order for her to be comfortable enough to take food from people. A lot of talking there, but hopefully the video helps explain this better.
Yeah, that's true. I guess if he has access to the barn or no, so he could be in the barn making noises. Yeah, she looks like she's looking at the ostrich. Now she's thinking about the food. Your son. It's got sort of this like, they're on either side of me. How do I go up there safely? right now, there's nothing so aversive going on, right? There's nothing so aversive that she won't take food. And that's the challenge that we're trying to figure out, how to create that environment. And we couldn't do it in the barn without some crazy shaping. And we can't quite do it there without some crazy shaping. We can do it here, but it's a really, look how hard she's trying to get close to you with the rocks. So I think our hypothesis is right. If we could just get you in a space that gives her the freedom to move away, she probably would.
So Soraya says, could be done, make a smaller approximation to a platform like a post a few meters away. So just to explain a little bit more there, that platform they had reinforcement history with, so we thought, oh, that would be a great place. But it turns out there's other things aversive about it, is what that told us, right? By feeding her and this other spot. Well, so what was happening is we were standing there talking, watching, and she approached us while we were standing over there. So we were like, it's not about the people. The people aren't necessarily aversive. We thought that was the issue, is that people were aversive. But then when she approached us over there, we were like, it's not so much the people. It's these areas where we're asking her to try and approach us, which are aversive. So her having the space to move away, and finding a place where it's easy for her to approach, her having the space to move away, her having the visibility, her not having things around her that, you know, she finds aversive, is critical. So we needed to develop a space where she could approach us, and so that we're doing some modifications to a specific spot where we think is going to be most successful, and the rocks aren't going to be in the way, and so that's what we're going to do. So so it kind of sounds like maybe what you're suggesting there, Soraya, a little modification. I don't think we're going to do it anywhere near the barn over there. I think the visibility is not very good. So we'll keep you posted. And actually they sent me a video where she was already doing some exploratory investigative stuff that, you know, she hadn't done in the past before. So we were already off to some really good success stories with that. So it's really about the, you know, environment, I think, is what I wanted to point out there by sharing that video. It's not about something internal with this animal. You know, we did several sessions where we tried to set up different things, and we really looked at her behavior, and by observing how she responded in these different environments where we thought we might get success, what we saw was, you know, look at all these things that she's saying, I don't like this about this space, and I don't like this about this space, and I don't like this about this space. Can you address these contingencies? And then I'm more likely to give you the responses you want. So that's what we needed to do. And now we're getting to where we need to go, because we need to do some behaviors with her that are going to be really important for her health care in the future. So she needs to really work on hoof care, and we just can't get started with her because of addressing these negative reinforcement contingencies. But now we're getting there. So it's really exciting. So that's what I mean about, you know, imagine if we just said, well, you know what, she's a nervous animal. We're not going to be able to get anywhere. Where would we be? We wouldn't be able to get anything done, right? So that's why we have to go back to this place of looking from the outside and looking at behavioral responses and letting that inform our decisions so that we can make some success, get to solutions. So that's the point of, you know, taking this look at the environment instead of looking at and blaming something internal with the animal, if that makes sense. All right, so let's go back to what to do, which was, you know, one of the questions from the top here. What can you do? Look outside the animal. What I just said. Remember, the environment impacts behavior. And then collect data, which is exactly what we did with that giraffe. We did a lot of observing, a lot of looking at information and saying, you know, that's telling us she thinks this is aversive. She, you know, that's aversive to her. She won't, you know, she's showing these conflicted responses. She keeps looking over at this. She keeps looking over at that. She's hesitant to approach. And, she would approach and she would retreat, she would approach and she would retreat. So there was lots of observable, measurable stuff for us to collect data on that would support our hypotheses or conclusions that, there was aversive stimuli in the environment. And then, when she walked up to us and approached us over there at the fence, that gave us information that was observable and measurable. And so what behaviors do you observe and under what conditions? And so all this gave us information that would help drive our next strategies. Try to avoid generalizations. We can acknowledge trends, that like we know orangutans don't like to go into water, or, that they are pretty dexterous with their hands, things like that. But we need to look at each animal and circumstance as its own unique case, So, I have seen some orangutans that will get in the water, so we need to remember that. And also get comfortable with saying, I don't know, or I need more information. We did that also with the giraffe that I just showed you. So we literally watched 4 training sessions with her before we really came up with our strategy. Like in the afternoon, she was so focused on, well, it's time for me to shift, that she was less likely to come over to the area that we identified that was going to be really good for making progress with her. And we decided, well, you know what? In the afternoon, her shifting behavior is really important, especially now that winter's here. We want to make sure she goes into the barn at night. Let's not compete with that behavior. So things like that, that informed us. We tried training in the barn, we tried training at that platform, and then we decided, so all those things, it's okay to say, I need more information. Let's do another session and try making these adjustments before we make our conclusions. So I do that a lot in my my consulting work. I don't automatically, and even when people talk to me and give me a bunch of information, I don't say, oh, I know. I say, well, let's go look, let's go do a session and watch and see what we observe. So it's okay to say, I don't know, and I need more information. And then again, use your critical thinking skills to ask questions about the latest doctrines. When you see somebody post on the internet that, this is it, this is the answer, you might want to, use what we've learned today to question some of those things, look for those hypothetical constructs, those explanatory, there we go, fictions, and circular reasoning when we see that kind of training dogma. It's easy to get kind of pulled down those pathways, especially if you see a lot of people saying yes, 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 and supporting those things. Popularity, we tend to, get sucked into those kinds of things, but popular doesn't make it right necessarily. So we have to use our critical thinking skills on those things. So let's see. I think that kind of leads us into our recap, which is, I guess, about the right time. So hypothetical constructs are unobserved processes or entities assumed to be present. And explanatory fictions explain behavior using fictional variables, such as those hypothetical constructs. And circular reasoning is faulty logic, where the effect that is observed is mistaken for the cause. And these are all mentalistic approaches to explaining behavior that can impede our ability to see the behavior clearly, or our solutions clearly. So if we kind of pivot to focus on the impact of the environment on observable, measurable behavior, we can collect information that can help us take action to create desired behavior changes. So we really focus on what's actually happening outside of the learner instead of what might be happening inside. Now, that's not to say that stuff isn't happening inside. So I want to remind you that we have a GOATS presentation, Global Online Animal Training Series presentation, that's going to help us get a little bit more insights into private events like emotions. And Anna Linehan is going to be doing that for us on February 27th. So if you haven't sent me a note to tell me that you want to register for that, and if you're a member, do that. If you're not a member, go to atfgoats.com to sign up for that one. So we do have some ways to kind of give us some insights into what might be going on with private emotions. So we do have that coming up too. So just to remind you of some other resources that you can kind of get more insights into what we discussed today, there is a live stream that does go into private events a little bit more. That's the Thinking and Emotions as an Animal. But again, I highly encourage you to come to the goats presentation, because that's going to take this way further. And also to help you with the observable, measurable stuff, go to our bigforanimals.com, our behavior intervention guidelines. So that will help you with how to tease all that out. And Annetta says, I'm so ready for the goats presentations. Me too. Speaking of, the next one is Monday, this coming Monday, with Jonathan Amy. And this is where he's going to talk about building fluency in smaller behaviors that help get you to bigger behaviors. And you may think, oh, that's no big deal, but trust me, it's a big deal. And it's not generally the approach that most of us take. So that's why this presentation is really going to impact you. So I highly encourage you to attend this one. He's a great speaker too. And then, as I mentioned, Anna Linehan is going to talk about emotions. And I'm like really geeking out on this topic right now. I've been reading a whole bunch of papers, and so I can't wait for this one as well. I highly encourage you to get on the list for this so that you can ask your questions, because it's a hot, hot, hot topic. And then if you are a member, you hopefully saw this in your email, but I'm just going to remind you that we do have this really cool affiliate program where basically you can earn income whenever you share your own private affiliate link that basically, says, hey, I'm in this program, I like it, if you want to learn from it, join with this link. And what I've done is I've added new images. So like this one on the left here, there's 12 of them, and they're the right size for like Instagram posts or Facebook posts. And so you can just download those images and share them with your link. If you have websites, you can put them on your websites too. But if you go to the affiliate FAQ page, it tells you, there's a video there that explains how an affiliate program works and how to use it if you're not sure. But it's really, really easy. And I kind of look at it as like, it's free money. Why not do it? And it's so easy. So anyway, I highly encourage people to check it out. And with the 12 new images, you've got one a month you could post if you wanted, and generate income pretty easy. I've also added a new course on strategies to reduce or eliminate stress for untrained animals when providing healthcare. This is one I presented at a veterinary conference last year. And then there's 2 more courses that are already loaded and ready to go. They're going to be released in February and March. I'm very excited about those. And then here is the next big, huge thing that I'm working on. I just feel like our You Be the Behavior Consultant courses, our live streams, are just so rich and full of content, and they're really valuable resources. And I want to make sure that people get credit for participating in these. So I started adding badges for all of them. It's going to take me a while because there's over 100, but from now on, there will always be an opportunity to get a badge for participating in these. So as I'm adding the new ones in, from now on, I will always make sure you can apply for a badge, but I'm also going to start, I'm also adding backlogs for all the ones in the past. So remember, you can share badges on CVs, you can put them on your website, you can put them on your performance evaluations, and you can also share them for certifying organizations to get CEUs. So I hope you members will appreciate these features. We put a lot of work into these courses, and you guys should get recognized for them. So that is a new feature that is now coming available for you. And as always, here's a citation for this particular live stream. Hopefully you can share that as well if you reference this for any reason. And if you're not a member, I hope you will join and take advantage of all these cool things that are happening here in animaltrainingfundamentals.com. All right, and all you have to do is go to that URL to join. Okay, there you go. That's what we covered today. Just a few things, right? So, so we are here next week with goats, remember? So Jonathan Amy's going to be here. So if you are not registered, do send me an email. And if you're not a member and want to register, we do have options for you. Just go to atfgoats.com and you can participate in this as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. Can't wait for you guys to hear Jonathan speak. It's going to be great. All right, guys, we did pretty well. It is now 11:59, just about an hour, so we did great. I thank you all for being here and participating and sharing your thoughts on this topic. It was awesome. So I look forward to seeing you here for Jonathan next week. I think that's going to do it. Thank you from Annetta, and I think that's going to do it. Oh, and thank you so much for all your work. I learned so much from Cynthia. Thank you, Cynthia. So glad you're here. I love hearing about your donkeys. And oh yeah, and we have a tower talk next week too. So after we attend goats on Monday, we can all get together and chat in our tower talk. And I also have a note for myself. We're going to start adding a little structure to our tower talk. So I'm going to have like an outline for those, so that we kind of hit some specific categories of topics, so that we make sure we discuss some of these cool topics in there. All right, guys, that's going to do it. Thank you guys. Take care, and we'll talk next week. All right. Bye, everybody.